My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 33 years old. And until that Saturday night, I honestly believed I knew what love looked like. I thought love was patience. I thought it was choosing someone on the ordinary days, not just the beautiful ones. I thought it was making room for another person's flaws because they made room for yours. For 3.5 years, that was what I thought I had with Ethan Hayes. We had lived together for the last 18 months in a small but warm house on the east side of town. Nothing fancy. A kitchen with one cabinet that never closed properly. A bedroom window that rattled when the wind got rough. A living room where we had built a life out of takeout containers. Movie nights, inside jokes, and half-finished plans for the future. Were we perfect? No. No couple is. But I trusted him. That was my first mistake. The party was at Ethan's best friend's place last Saturday. It was supposed to be casual. The kind of thing where people say, just a few friends. And somehow by 9 o'clock, the house is packed wall to wall with coworkers, neighbors, old college friends, and people whose names you forget 5 seconds after hearing them. Ethan had been talking about it all week. Come on, Claire, he'd said, while buttoning his shirt in front of our bedroom mirror. It'll be fun. You barely come out with my friends anymore. That stung a little. Because it wasn't true. I showed up. I always showed up. Even when I was tired. Even when I knew I would spend half the night trying to fit into conversations that had started years before I entered the room. So I went. We arrived around 8. Music was already pulsing through the walls. And the smell of beer, perfumi, and too much cologne hit me the second the door opened. Ethan kissed my cheek, squeezed my hand once. Then, almost immediately drifted toward his work crowd. I didn't mind at first. That was normal for him. Ethan had always been social, in a way I wasn't. He could slide into a group and become the center of it without even trying. I grabbed a drink. Made small talk with a woman I recognized from a barbecue months earlier. And told myself to relax. For the first hour, nothing felt wrong. Then, around 9:30, I realized I hadn't seen Ethan in a while. I walked through the kitchen first. Then the back patio. Then finally checked the living room. That was where I found him. He was sitting on the armrest of a couch, angled toward a woman with glossy dark hair and a red sweater. Marie-Selene, his coworker. The one he had mentioned casually over the past few months. Marissa is hilarious. Marissa actually gets my sense of humor. Marissa said the funniest thing at work today, always said lightly. Always made to sound harmless. But harmless did not look like what I saw in that living room. Ethan was leaning toward her, laughing at something on her phone. His hand was on her shoulder. Not brushing it by accident. Not there for balance. But settled there with a comfort that made my stomach tighten. Marissa said something, and Ethan tipped his head back laughing like she had just unlocked some private version of him I no longer had access to. Then she shifted closer, her knee touching his palaver. Her body angled into him like the rest of the room didn't exist. I stood there for a second, waiting for him to notice me, waiting for him to move his hand, waiting for him to remember he had arrived with me. He didn't, so I walked over. Hey, I said. Ethan looked up, and the first thing I saw in his face was not guilt. It was annoyance. Oh, hey, he said. What's up? That little O cut deeper than it should have. Like I had interrupted something. Like I was the inconvenience, just checking on you. I said, you've been over here a while. Marissa smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. Ethan lifted the phone slightly. We're just looking at something from work. It's funny. You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it. 5 words. Said casually. But they landed like a door, closing. I looked at him. Can I talk to you for a second? His jaw tightened. About what? Privately. He sighed. Actually sighed. Then he stood up and gave Marissa this apologetic little look. Like I was a teacher, pulling him out of recess. Sure, he said. Excuse me. We stepped into the hallway. Away from the music and laughter. The walls were thin, so I could still hear people shouting over the playlist. Completely unaware that my entire relationship was about to split open beside the coat closet. What's going on? I asked. Ethan folded his arms. I was going to ask you the same thing. You were all over her. His eyebrows shot up. Are you serious? Yes. Ethan, I'm serious. He laughed once. Sharp and cold. Claire. We were looking at a meme. You had your hand on her shoulder. Oh my God. He dragged a hand down his face. Stop being insecure. There it was. Insecure. The word people use when they want to turn your observation into your flaw. I stared at him. I'm not being insecure. I'm reacting to what I saw. What you saw was me talking to a coworker. What I saw was my boyfriend acting more intimate with another woman than he's acted with me in weeks. His face hardened. That's dramatic, he said. And honestly, it's embarrassing. I felt something inside me go very still. Embarrassing. Yes. Everyone can see how jealous you're being. For a moment, I just looked at him. The defensiveness. The irritation. The way he wasn't worried that he had hurt me. He was worried that I had noticed. That was the first real crack. Not Marissa. Not the touching. Not the laughing. The way he made me feel crazy for standing in front of the truth. I nodded slowly. You know what I said quietly. You're right. His expression softened with relief. Thank you. Can we just go back and enjoy the party? Sure, I said. You go ahead. I'm going to grab another drink. He believed me. That almost hurt more. He walked back into the living room without touching my arm. Without apologizing. Without even glancing over his shoulder. I watched him return to Marissa. Watched him sit beside her again. Watched the space between them disappear, like I had never interrupted at all. He didn't look back once. I set my drink down on the kitchen counter. Then I walked out the front door. No goodbye. No explanation. No scene. Just the cold night air on my face and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I drove home in complete silence. No music. No podcast. No angry phone call to a friend. Just my hands gripping the steering wheel, while my mind replayed his voice again and again. Stop being insecure. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my phone had already started buzzing. I didn't look at it. Inside. The house felt different. Too quiet. Too familiar. Too full of a life I suddenly didn't trust. His laptop was open on the dining table. Ethan always left it there. I have nothing to hide. He used to joke. I stood over it for almost a full minute before touching it. Then I opened his messages. And in less than 30 seconds, I found Marissa Lane. The thread went back 4 months. 4 months. At first, it was work things. Then inside jokes. Then complaints about me. Claire's been so distant lately. She doesn't get my humor anymore. Sometimes, I feel like I'm living with a roommate. I stopped breathing normally as I scrolled. There were lunch plans he had never mentioned. Late-night conversations after I had gone to bed. Pictures he had sent her from our home, from our kitchen, from our couch. A little pieces of our life handed to another woman, like souvenirs. Nothing explicit. Somehow, that made it worse. Because it was intimate, familiar, emotional. It was the slow betrayal people pretend doesn't count because no one took their clothes off. Then I found the message that split me clean in half. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had written, "Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we'd met first." Marissa had replied, "Maybe we still get to find out." And Ethan's answer, "Lol, maybe. Not. I have a girlfriend. Not. Don't say that. Not even silence. Maybe." With a laughing emoji. I took pictures of everything with my phone. My hands were shaking so badly, some of the photos came out blurred. So I took them again. I sent them to my email. Then I closed the laptop exactly how I had found it. After that, I sat in the dark living room and waited. By then, my phone had 15 missed calls and more than 30 texts. "Where did you go? Claire. This is so immature. Everyone is asking about you. You're embarrassing me?" Then finally, "At 11:20, și doi. Fine. I'll get a ride from someone else." I didn't respond. "A 12:40, și 7 m." Headlights swept across the living room wall. A car pulled up outside. I stood slowly and looked through the curtain. Marissa was driving. Ethan sat in her passenger seat, laughing. That same laugh. They stayed in the car for almost 10 minutes. I watched him touch her arm. Watched her lean closer. Watched them speak in low voices like the night had not already taken enough from me. Then Ethan got out. Wavell. And walked toward the house. When he came through the front door and saw me sitting there in the dark, he jumped. "Jesus? Claire." He snapped. "You scared me." I looked at him. "Good," I said. Ethan stood frozen in the entryway. One hand still wrapped around his car keys. The porch light filtering through the glass panels behind him cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. He recovered first. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?" he asked, trying to laugh it off. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" I was worried. I stared at him. "Were you?" His forehead creased. "What is that supposed to mean?" I tilted my head slightly. "How was the ride home?" "It was fine." He shrugged out of his jacket. "Marissa drove me because you abandoned me at the party." Abandoned. That word settled between us. I repeated it slowly. That's an interesting way to describe leaving a party where my boyfriend spent the evening emotionally attached to another woman. His jaw tightened instantly. "Oh my God. Claire, are we seriously doing this again? You tell me." I already explained what happened. "You mean the part where you told me I was insecure?" He sighed dramatically. "You are twisting this into something it isn't." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said quietly, "I saw the messages." Everything changed. He stopped breathing. It wasn't subtle. His shoulders stiffened. The color drained from his face. "What?" "The messages." His eyes darted toward the dining room, then back to me. "You went through my laptop. It was open. You invaded my privacy." I almost laughed. The audacity of it. I shook my head slowly. "Before you turn this into a conversation about privacy, let's talk about the fact that you've been emotionally cheating on me for 4 months." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I wasn't cheating. I stood. "Really?" He ran both hands through his hair. "It wasn't like that." I took my phone from the coffee table. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we'd met first. His eyes widened. I kept going. "Maybe we still get to find out." His face had gone completely pale. "Lol. Maybe." I lowered the phone. "Want to explain that?" Silence. "I can also ask about the lunches you never mentioned." He swallowed. "Claire, the late-night conversations after I went to sleep. It wasn't the photos. They weren't inappropriate. The constant complaints about me. He stared at me helplessly. Finally, he whispered, "Those were just friendly conversations." I blinked at him. Then I cut him off. "Don't." "What?" "Don't insult my intelligence." His eyes filled with panic. "Claire, please listen to me." "No." I took a step toward him. "You spent 4 months building intimacy with another woman while coming home to me every night, pretending everything was fine." "I didn't sleep with her." "I don't care." His face crumpled. "What?" "I don't care if you slept with her." He looked genuinely shocked. "Claire, no." I pointed toward the hallway. "You gave her everything that mattered." The words surprised even me, because the moment I said them, I realized they were true. "You gave her your excitement." He looked down. "You gave her your emotional energy." He said nothing. "You gave her the private jokes." Tears gathered in his eyes. "You gave her the version of you that used to belong to us." His voice cracked. "I never meant to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "Then what exactly did you think would happen?" "I don't know." "You didn't know?" "I wasn't thinking." "You weren't thinking for 4 months." He sat heavily on the edge of the armchair, burying his face in his hands. "It just happened." "No," I said quietly. "It didn't." He looked up. "Affairs don't just happen." "Ethan." He flinched. "You made choices." I counted them on my fingers. You chose to answer her messages. You chose to have lunch with her. You chose to complain about me. You chose to hide things. You chose to entertain fantasies. You chose to make me feel crazy when I noticed. He started crying. Actual tears. "I love you." I stared at him. The words that once would have destroyed me barely touched me now. "No." "What?" "You love what I provide." His face twisted. "That's not true." "You love stability." "Claire, you love knowing someone comes home to you." "Please." "You love having someone pay half the bills and remember your mother's birthday and buy your favorite cereal." He shook his head violently. "I love you. You don't get to call this love." His shoulders collapsed. I made a mistake. I looked at him. A 4-month mistake. It wasn't physical. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, something inside me had settled. "It doesn't matter." He stared. "What?" "You emotionally moved out of this relationship months ago." I took a slow breath. "You just forgot to tell me." Tears streamed down his face now. "We can fix this." "No." "We can go to counseling." "No." "I'll quit my job." "No." "I'll block her." "No." His voice cracked apart. "Please." I felt my own eyes sting. 3.5 years. 3.5 years of movie nights. Road trips. Sunday grocery runs. Inside jokes. Shared dreams. 3.5 years don't disappear because you decide they should. They linger. They beg. They whisper. Part of me wanted to run across the room and hold him. Habit, masquerading as love. But another part of me remembered standing in that hallway while he called me insecure, remembered him walking back to Marissa, remembered him never once looking over his shoulder. That part of me stood firm. "I want you to pack a bag." He stared at me. "What?" "You heard me. This is my home too. You can come back tomorrow when I'm not here and collect the rest of your things." His voice rose. "Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at him steadily. "Call Marissa." His eyes widened. "It isn't like that." "Then call one of your friends." "Claire, I'm done solving problems you created." He stood abruptly. "You can't be serious." I met his chaza. "I've never been more serious." He broke. Completely. Sobbing openly. "I'll do anything." "You should have thought of that before tonight." I ended it. "When?" "What?" "When exactly did you end it?" His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I nodded once. That's what I thought. His face twisted with shame. Please. No. We can survive this. Maybe. Hope flashed across his expression. Then I finished. But not together. The hope vanished. I don't understand how you're giving up so easily. I almost laughed. Easily. I pressed a hand against my chest. Do you think this is easy? He said nothing. My entire future just exploded in front of me. Tears finally slid down my own cheeks. I have to grieve the man I thought you were, while staring at the man you actually became. He looked devastated. I never wanted this. But you chose it. The room fell silent. Finally, after several endless seconds, Ethan nodded weakly. He disappeared down the hallway. I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding, hangers scraping against metal rods. The sounds of a shared life being dismantled. 15 minutes later, he emerged carrying a duffel bag. Mascara wasn't streaked across his face, but grief was. His eyes were swollen and red. This isn't over, he whispered. I looked at him. Every version of us stood in that moment. The first date, the first kiss, the first apartment, the future we had planned. Then I remembered him laughing in Marissa's car. No, I said softly. Yes, it is. He stared at me, waiting, hoping, begging. I opened the front door. Cold night air rushed inside. For a second, I thought he might fight harder. Instead, he picked up his bag, walked past me, stopped on the porch, and said without turning around, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, then answered honestly, I know. He waited. I opened my eyes, but that's not enough anymore. He walked away. I locked the door behind him. Then I slid down against it and finally let myself break. I cried until my chest hurt, until breathing felt impossible, until the house that had once felt safe echoed with absence. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Ethan. Blocked. Then another number. Please talk to me. Blocked. Another. I'm sorry. Blocked. Another. I ended things with Marissa. Please. Blocked. I sat there in the darkness, tears drying against my skin as the notifications continued. For the first time in years, I was completely alone, and somehow, even through the devastation, I realized I no longer felt crazy. I had trusted what I saw, trusted what I knew, trusted myself. Outside, dawn was still hours away. Inside, my old life had ended, and somewhere beneath the heartbreak, something else had begun. The painful, terrifying process of choosing myself. Sunday morning arrived quietly, too quietly. For a few disoriented seconds after opening my eyes, I forgot everything. Then I turned toward the empty side of the bed and remembered. The silence in the house felt unnatural. No sound of Ethan making coffee while checking emails. No humming from the shower. No absent-minded questions about whether we needed milk, just stillness. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. 3.5 years. Gone. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I let it ring. A voicemail notification appeared moments later. Another unknown number called, then another. I didn't answer any of them. By noon, I'd blocked 6 different numbers. 1 belonged to Ethan's mother. 1 belonged to one of his friends. Then, unbelievably, 1 belonged to Marissa. The nerve of her trying to contact me almost made me laugh. Almost. Around 12:30, someone knocked on the front door. I froze. The knocking came again. Then the doorbell. Then his voice. Claire. I closed my eyes. I know you're in there. I stayed still. Please. Another knock. We need to talk. My chest tightened. Every instinct I developed over years of loving him urged me to open the door immediately. Fix it. Comfort him. Listen, because that's what I'd always done. I had been the peacemaker, the forgiver, the woman who found solutions, but another voice had finally started speaking louder, the one that asked, "Who takes care of you?" The knocking continued. "I know I don't deserve this." Ethan said through the door. "But please let me explain." I stood slowly, walked toward the entrance, unlocked the deadbolt, opened the door. He looked terrible. Same clothes, bloodshot eyes, dark circles beneath them. For a moment, seeing him like that hurt. Then I remembered how he'd looked, laughing beside Marissa. "What do you want?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "I want to explain." "There's nothing left to explain. You don't understand everything." I almost smiled. "No, you don't understand that nothing physical happened." I stared at him. "You think that's your strongest argument? It matters." "Does it?" His eyes filled again. "It means we didn't cross that line." I folded my arms. "You crossed every line that mattered." He shook his head desperately. "Claire, please listen." I listened for 4 months without realizing it. "What?" "You were telling me exactly who you were." His face crumpled. "You complained about me to another woman." I was venting. "You built intimacy with her. It wasn't intentional. You hid things." I was confused. "You let me question my own sanity." He opened his mouth, closed it. I continued. "You remember standing in that hallway?" His gaze dropped. "When you called me insecure?" "Claire, no." My voice remained calm. "You looked me in the eye and made me feel crazy for noticing what was right in front of me." His shoulders slumped. I panicked. "You manipulated me." He flinched. "I didn't mean to." "But you still did it." Silence settled between us. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed him. That was the complicated part. I believed he was sorry. I just didn't believe his sorrow changed what he'd done. "You know what hurts the most?" I asked quietly. He looked up. "I trusted you." Tears slid down his face. "I know." "No." "Ethan." I shook my head. "I don't think you do." I stepped onto the porch. "You weren't just my boyfriend." I swallowed hard. "You were my safest place." His face shattered. "I know. And I defended you." I laughed bitterly. "I defended you to my friends when they said you seemed distant." I looked away briefly. "I defended you when you worked late. When you canceled plans. When you stopped asking about my day." His breathing became uneven. "I thought relationships had seasons." I looked back at him. "I never imagined you were spending those seasons investing somewhere else." He collapsed onto the porch step, sobbing, "I love you." There it was again. The phrase I'd wanted so desperately to hear during countless smaller disappointments. The phrase that now felt almost meaningless. "I know you think you do." I said. His head lifted slightly. "But people who love you don't slowly replace you." He covered his face. "I hate myself." I felt sympathy. I hated that I felt sympathy. 3.5 years don't disappear because betrayal arrives. Love doesn't evaporate overnight. It changes shape. It breaks. It mourns. But pieces remain. Part of me wanted to sit beside him. Another part remembered opening his messages. Remembered reading, "Claire doesn't get my humor anymore. Sometimes I feel like I'm living with a roommate." Remembered realizing I'd become a villain in a story he'd been writing to justify himself. "You painted me as the problem." I said quietly. "What?" "You made me into someone who deserved this." His hands dropped. "I didn't. You convinced yourself I wasn't enough." He shook his head frantically. "No." "Then why?" His lips parted. Nothing came out. I nodded. "Exactly." He looked completely defeated. "Please." His voice cracked. "We can go to therapy." "No. I'll spend years earning back your trust." You had years. We can start over. I took a deep breath. No. He stared at me. The realization finally began settling into his expression. This wasn't an argument. It wasn't punishment. I wasn't trying to scare him into changing. I was done. You mean it? He whispered. I nodded. We're over. The words hung heavily between us. 3.5 years reduced to 2. We're over. He broke down again. Not the restrained crying from the night before. This was raw grief. I ruined everything. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes. He looked stunned by my honesty. I softened my tone. But that doesn't mean you're ruined forever. He blinked. What? You made terrible choices. I looked directly at him. But what you do next determines who you become. He wiped at his face. You really don't think we have a chance? I thought about it. About rebuilding, about wondering forever whether another Marissa would eventually appear, about second-guessing every late meeting, every text notification, every smile at someone else's phone. Then I answered, no. He stared at me, then nodded slowly. I understand. I wasn't sure he truly did, but I appreciated that he stopped fighting. I'll text you times to collect the rest of your things, I said. He nodded again. I won't bother you. I hesitated, then asked, one question. He looked up. When you wrote, maybe... His face went pale. What did you mean? He looked away. When he answered, his voice barely rose above a whisper. I think... He stopped. Tried again. I think I liked knowing someone new still found me exciting. The honesty hurt more than another lie would have. I nodded once. Thank you. He stood. Neither of us moved toward the other. No goodbye kiss. No hug. No dramatic reconciliation. Just two people standing among the wreckage of what they'd built. He walked down the driveway. Halfway to the street. He turned around. I really did love you. I looked at him for a long moment. Then answered truthfully. I know. His eyes filled again. But eventually, I continued softly. Love becomes a choice. I felt tears sting my own eyes. And you stopped choosing us. He lowered his head. Then he walked away. I watched until he disappeared. After closing the door, I leaned against it and slid to the floor. 20 minutes later, I finally stopped crying. By Thursday evening, a mutual friend called. I heard what happened. News travels fast. I'm sorry. Claire. Thanks. There was a pause. Then she sighed. For what it's worth. People noticed. I straightened. What? Ethan and Marissa. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? It wasn't just you. I closed my eyes. They were obvious. The knot in my chest twisted tighter. Why didn't anyone say anything? We didn't want to create drama. You thought maybe I didn't notice. Something like that? I laughed bitterly. The worst part is that I did notice. Silence. Then, after you left the party? I gripped the phone. What? They stayed. My pulse accelerated. They kept talking. Laughing. I swallowed. And they left together. I closed my eyes. I know Marissa drove him home. No. Her voice softened. I mean, they deliberately left together. My stomach dropped. A lot of people noticed. Heat rushed to my face. So I was the pathetic girlfriend. Everyone pitied. No. You were the only person brave enough to call out what everyone else saw. I sat in silence. Because that was somehow worse. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated. I hadn't been insecure. I had simply trusted the wrong person. 2 weeks after the party, life finally started resembling something manageable again. I wasn't okay, but I was functioning. Work helped. The gym helped. Exhaustion helped me sleep. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped expecting Ethan's key in the front door. I started breathing without feeling like I was drowning. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I walked into a coffee shop near my apartment and came face to face with Marissa Lane. For a second, neither of us moved. The coffee shop buzzed with ordinary life around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the scrape of chairs against the floor, a college student laughing too loudly near the window, a mother trying to convince her toddler that blueberry muffins were not an acceptable lunch. Meanwhile, I was standing 10 feet away from the woman who had helped unravel my entire future. Marissa noticed me at the exact same moment. Her expression shifted rapidly. Recognition, shock, panic. She looked like she might grab her drink and run. Instead, she froze. I should have walked away. I knew that. There was no version of this conversation that would give me back the years I'd lost, or erase the nights I'd spent crying on my bathroom floor. But curiosity can be stronger than wisdom, and after weeks of replaying everything in my mind, I wanted answers. Even if they hurt. I walked toward her. "We should talk," I said. Marissa blinked. "You want to talk to me?" "No," I replied. "Honestly? But I think we need to." She hesitated before nodding toward the empty chair across from her table. "Okay." I sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Up close, she looked different than I remembered from the party. Less polished, tired. The confidence she'd worn so effortlessly that night had vanished. Finally, I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. "Did you sleep with him?" Her eyes widened. "What? You heard me." "No." The answer came immediately. "I swear, Claire, nothing physical ever happened." I studied her face, searching for hesitation, a lie, anything. I found none. But strangely, the answer didn't bring relief, because I had already realized something important. Physical betrayal wasn't the only betrayal. Sometimes it wasn't even the worst kind. "You wanted to, though," I said quietly. Marissa lowered her eyes. After several seconds, she nodded. "Yes." The honesty hurt, but somehow it also steadied me, because truth, even ugly truth, was easier to carry than uncertainty. "You knew he had a girlfriend." "I did." "You knew we'd been together for 3.5 years." "I knew." "Then why?" Her shoulders sagged. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I nearly laughed. That's everyone's favorite sentence. She rubbed her palms together nervously. "It started as harmless conversations." I remembered Ethan saying almost the exact same thing. She continued. "We worked together. We joked around. We had lunch sometimes." "You mean secret lunches?" She winced. "Yes." I crossed my arms. And then Marissa looked down at her untouched coffee. "Ethan talked about you." My stomach tightened. "He said you had grown distant." I said nothing. "He said you didn't understand him anymore." I closed my eyes briefly. "He made it sound like your relationship was dying." I opened them again. "Did you ever ask if he was trying to fix it?" Her silence answered for her. "No," she whispered. "You didn't?" I wanted to believe him. Because it made it easier. Tears filled her eyes. "Yes." The admission hung between us. "You know what the worst part is?" I asked. "What?" "He wasn't distant because I stopped loving him." I looked at her steadily. He became distant because he had already started investing in someone else. Marissa's eyes widened. "I never thought about it that way." "Of course you didn't." I leaned back in my chair. Neither did he. The barista called someone's name. People moved through the line. Outside, a couple walked by, holding hands. The world continued turning. Marissa twisted her fingers together. "After you ended things?" I looked at her. He changed. What do you mean? He got intense. I blinked. Intenser. He wanted everything immediately. She let out a humorless laugh. He started talking about finally being together. I stared at her. He talked about moving in. The shock must have shown on my face. What? It was only a few days later. My chest tightened. He said now that there weren't any obstacles. We could stop hiding. I felt sick. Marissa looked miserable. He talked about trips, a future. I couldn't speak. 3.5 years together, and less than a week after I ended things. Ethan was planning a life with someone else. He wanted certainty. She said softly, but I realized something. What? I didn't actually want him. I frowned. What? She laughed bitterly. I liked the attention. The fantasy. The excitement. The flirting. But reality? Her expression twisted. He was exhausting. I stared at her. He became clingy. He wanted constant reassurance. He needed to know where I was. He wanted immediate answers about what we were. She looked ashamed. I realized I had helped destroy a relationship because I enjoyed feeling chosen. I said nothing. Then I understood something terrible. What? If he'd do that with me? She swallowed. He could eventually do it to me. The irony settled heavily between us. Eventually. She whispered. I ended it 3 days ago. I blinked. You ended it. She nodded. I told him I couldn't do it anymore. And, he cried. I looked away. He begged me to reconsider. My chest tightened. He said he'd made sacrifices. I closed my eyes. He said, we had something special. I inhaled slowly. And then, Marissa's voice broke. I realized I wasn't special. She wiped tears from beneath her eyes. I was just new. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Eventually, I asked, why are you telling me all this? She looked at me. Because I owe you the truth. I studied her face, then nodded once. For what it's worth. She said quietly, you deserved better. The words sounded painfully familiar. Ethan used to talk about you like you were boring. My throat tightened. He said life had become predictable. I waited. But after everything happened, she looked directly at me. I realized predictable meant safe. Tears filled my eyes unexpectedly. He confused stability with boredom. She nodded, and I helped him do it. The honesty in her voice made it difficult to hate her completely. Not because she wasn't responsible, she was, but because people are rarely monsters in the way we want them to be. Sometimes they're selfish, lonely, flattered, immature, weak. Sometimes ordinary people make devastating choices. I don't forgive you. I said softly. She nodded. I know, but I don't hate you. Marissa covered her mouth as tears spilled over. You should. Maybe. I stood from the table, but carrying hatred doesn't give me back what I lost. She looked up at me. I'm sorry. I believed she meant it. I know. I walked toward the exit. Claire? I turned around. You really did love him. I smiled sadly. Yes. She wiped at her face. I'm sorry he didn't know what to do with that. I left before I could answer. Outside, the afternoon sun warmed my skin. I stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, watching strangers pass by. 6 weeks earlier, I had thought heartbreak would kill me. Instead, it transformed me. It taught me that love without respect isn't enough, that loyalty isn't old-fashioned, that intuition deserves a voice. Ethan tried contacting me one final time 2 weeks later. A long email. He wrote about growth, regret, lessons learned. He said he finally understood what he had thrown away. He said he'd give anything for another chance. I read it once, then deleted it, blocked his email, and closed that chapter. through mutual friends. I heard pieces of what happened afterward. He lost some friendships. People viewed him differently at work. He tried dating. Nothing lasted. A small part of me felt sad for him. The rest understood that consequences are often the most honest teachers. As from me, I went on a few dates. Nothing serious. I wasn't rushing. 3.5 years with someone who betrayed my trust taught me to move carefully, to pay attention, to believe actions over promises. The hardest part wasn't losing Ethan. It was accepting that I would never fully understand when things changed. Had he loved me once? Had he stopped? Was Marissa the cause? Or simply the symptom of cracks that had already formed? I don't have those answers. Maybe I never will. And slowly, I've learned to be okay with that. What I do know is this: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. When your instincts whisper that something isn't right, listen. And when someone tries to convince you that reality is merely insecurity, that's not love. That's manipulation. That night at the party, when Ethan rolled his eyes and told me to stop being insecure, while another woman occupied a space that should have belonged to boundaries and respect, he showed me exactly who he was. I just wasn't ready to see it. But eventually, I did. And eventually, I walked away. Life after heartbreak isn't magical. You don't wake up one morning completely healed. It's quieter than that. One day, you laugh without forcing it. Another day, you realize you haven't checked your blocked messages in weeks. Eventually, the memories stop cutting quite so deeply. You become different, more cautious, stronger, more protective of your peace. But okay. And okay is enough. Enough to build something new. Enough to trust yourself again. Enough to choose the woman who stayed when everyone else left. Me.